Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History Spiritual Quest. We're inside Chapter 13 of The Impersonal Life by Joseph Benner. We've been through Chapter 13 of the Book of John. We're looking at each book to see the resonance between them, the same way that Elvis tried to find it. The same way that he carried it forward in his songs, his performances, the annotations that he wrote into these very texts and gave to other people. Hi, South Cali girl. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Monica. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. We're going to get started with a song. This is Telegram from a Friend.
Lights came down on Vegas gold. July heat, a crown retold. Applause like thunder, stars align. But one true friend was not in line. A telegram, a quiet grace. From 12 years deep, a loyal face. I read your words, they calmed the flame. In all that noise, I spoke your name. I wish you could have been here, Gary. The velvet night, the roaring crowd. But in my heart, your voice was steady, a whisper soft, a faith unbowed. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the haze to Graceland's porch where silence sings and friendship wears no stage or wings. The suits, the gifts, the famous hands, they cheered the king, they made demands. But in the mirror doubt would stare, and only you knew what was there. I wrote you lines in trembling ink, not for the press, not for the drink, just for the man who saw me hold beyond the glitter, past the road. Say hello to everyone, I'll be home when this is done. The curtain falls, the echo fades, but you remain my serenade. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the hay to Graceland's porch where silence sings. Friendship wears no stage or wings.
Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. What have you, the perfect, the eternal, to do with past or future incarnations? Can the perfect add to its perfection, or the eternal come out of or return to eternity? So we are returning to chapter 13 of Joseph Benner's The Impersonal Life. And he's been talking to us about what true authority is. And that authority is not external to ourselves. Knowledge is external to ourselves, although we can access it all internally. But we like to pull in our knowledge from outside, from our life experiences. But the authority about those experiences is not the experience itself. It's not the person who brought it to us. It's not the person who explains it to us. It's the resonance that we feel with the I am in our hearts. And so Joseph Benner is stretching this idea out past Christianity to all forms of faith. If you have faith and you take these ideas or knowledge that are given to you, even if they're about past or future incarnations, Joseph's just brought in reincarnation. But you take those inside to the I am in communion, which you reach by being still and knowing I am God. That's Joseph Benner's instruction. It's also Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. And be still means to quiet the mind, to cease struggling, to surrender. And there's multiple ways to get there, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you sit and do nothing in meditation. Some people use different rituals or objects or words to bring them into this state of communion with the I am. It's going to be individual to each person, but that's how your Bible or your rosary or your family fit in. When you feel certain kinds of love, which just means that your conduit is more open in those circumstances, that's your sheepfold. That's where you can reach the I am in your heart. That's where you can have the two-way communication. You always have one-way communication where you can talk. The I am's always sending a message. He's always broadcasting. It's the reception on our end that's always the issue. It's what Joseph Benner talks about as alignment, and that things fog us from the I am. And South Carolina girl or California girl says, amen, let God be in control. Whatever is going on in your life, it's a two-way communication. It's always two-way, but sometimes we can't hear what he's saying. And even when we do hear, Peter heard, Peter the Rock, but he did not understand until he had spiraled around the ideas and the knowledge for a while. But this passage reinforces that our divine shard, which is that piece of us, our soul, inside that connects directly to God, we are all a part of the divine. That's the perfect, the eternal. Eternal is not about time, it's about not time. That time is a construct of our minds, and the eternal exists outside of that. It's a word that symbolizes that outside of time for us. That's where God lives, in the divine now, which is every place, space, point, time, all collapsed into a single spot, a single point. Joseph Benner refers to that as the Word. And it's saying here, what has your divine shard to do with past or future incarnations? Can the perfect add to its perfections? So he's saying that even if there was past or future incarnations, they're using different tools, different personalities, that the divine shard itself is always the divine shard. It's like an actor in a play. It might wear different makeup, but it's not different because it played the different parts. It's always the divine shard. You might also think of this as an author writing a fiction book. Every character is the author, even though every one of them seems different. And none of them are fully the author. That's the if we had incarnations, and it's also an expression of what we are now here, that our personality does not define who we are. Our shard defines who we are. Our personality filters who we are into what others see. It filters it into the projection that we give, the projection of ourselves that we give to others. This says, or the eternal come out of or return to eternity. This is a statement of unity. Have you ever left unity? You feel like you have. You put this mask on, you're playing a part on this real earth in this project, but in truth, we are all still in unity. So you can't return to unity because you've always been in unity. This eternal eternity, it's the piece of us that exists outside of our sequential experience of the universe. Hi, Big Money Mike. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And California Girl says, another way God speaks to us in his word, the Holy Bible. I don't know why I want to keep saying you're from Carolina today all of a sudden. And this says, I am, and notice it's all capitalized, so that's the divine speaking to us directly in our hearts. I am and you are one with me, and always have been and always will be. The I am of you dwells in and reincarnates in all bodies for the one purpose of expressing my idea. You know, I don't remember Elvis ever addressing reincarnation. I don't know if I've ever heard of him talk about it. I think Ed Parker mentioned something about them speaking about it. And I'm sure Elvis would have been fascinated by this in the same way that he was fascinated by things like UFOs and these larger-than-life mysteries. But I don't know if he believed in reincarnation or if he didn't. I know he had to have read about it because he was reading Eastern religions. I know that Joseph Benner is talking about it because there's just a massive amount of cultural focus on Eastern religions, reincarnation, seances, the spiritual world in terms of like ghosts. Around the turn of the 20th century, for like 10 years on either side, maybe as much as 20 on either side. It was growing in the last 20, from like 1880 to 1900, and then it like peaked and between 1900 and 1910, and then kind of died off by World War I. Really destroyed most of the interest in these things. Of course, they surged back later, but around the turn of the century when Joseph was writing this book, it was big news. All thoughts of Eastern religions and mystical things, and they were tying it to archaeology. Archaeology was doing great things at that moment, like King Tut. And so this says, the I am of you dwells in and reincarnates in all bodies for the one purpose of expressing my idea. This is an expression of unity, that we are all pieces of God, therefore we all are God. Now, we're only shards, so we cannot contain all of the divine. We are splinters of the divine that have been sent here with purpose. And that's the purpose of expressing my idea. But it's saying that all divine shards ultimately are one. We're splintered for the purposes of this project. But that in truth, we are in unity. And as the previous passage told us, we're really not returning to unity because we've never left. We're all still there with each other, all one, but we've given ourselves the illusion that we are separate here on earth, but it's because we've got to express these ideas, which will eventually all come together. I think of it as film projections. We're all projecting our own film strip, but one day all of these film strips will line up and shine at the exact same moment and point. And that's all the film strips of all time, since man began, since humanity first was created, until the moment that it ends. All of those projections will focus onto a single point that will be the collapse into the Word that Joseph Benner is describing as the Great Project. That's when all of the expressions of my idea, this capitalized my idea, will be complete. And Elizabeth says that all of that is very interesting. There's so much that we don't know. And I think you're referencing the UFOs and the reincarnation and these other mystical ideas that are fairly far outside of Christianity, or are just part of the world Christianity doesn't look at. I don't think it addresses UFOs. And Big Money Mike says, we're here as a life experience in learning. Isn't that right? I would say so, that this is all, individually it's for us for the learning, but collectively it's so that we perfect and express the divine attribute we're supposed to express. And that's what allows others to learn. So the learning and the self improvement is definitely there. And I don't know improvement's the right word, but the movement up the spiritual spiral, and up's not really even the right word. We like to think of up because we like to think of ascension, and we like as humans to put things in order, and that requires numbering and stacking things on top of each other. But there is a spiral, and we're moving through the spiral. I don't know that any piece of it is elevated above any other, but it helps to think of it that way sometimes. And yes, we're always learning, but ultimately we already know. That is the paradox that is being expressed to us here. Then the book says, humanity is my body. In it I live, move, and have my being, expressing the glorious light of my idea through my attributes. So humanity is my body. The book before has likened us to cells in a body. That would have been advanced scientific knowledge at the time Joseph wrote this. The microscopes that were now in use at that time, they could see cells, and that was not something that people had seen before. Now, had they gotten down to the point of atoms? Well, no. They weren't really even into subcellular structure. They could just finally see the cells and start distinguishing, hey, there's stuff in there. But we're built on a fractal basis, which means that you can keep finding smaller and smaller layers. And now we're all the way down to quantum physics, which is subatomic particles. They're very, very small, cannot be seen with a microscope. But what Joseph's doing is he's taking the most advanced scientific knowledge of the day and he's tying it through this book back to Christianity and also to other faith, because he's trying to widen Christianity into other faiths as well. But he's marrying the science in, which is probably the number one enemy to religion at the time. People would say today it's probably the number one enemy. It's actually not an enemy at all. It's just a method of looking objectively at the universe. Religion is not a way of looking objectively at the universe. Joseph Bender is not a way of looking objectively at the universe. So it becomes hard to tie these things together. But he's done that here because he's talking about humanity as the body, and it brings back this idea of cells, and that we're each a piece of the divine, and that our own body is created from cells, so that God is a fractal structure as well. Everywhere that we look, we can see a fractal reflection of God. And fractal just means that you keep getting smaller and smaller in the layer, or you could get larger and larger in the layer, and the layer keeps replicating the previous layers. Could think of the structure of the solar system. That mirrors the structure of an atom. If you were to look at the way an atom is structured around a nuclei and things orbit around it, it looks like the depictions that we use of the solar system. The cosmos moves in spirals, just as our lives and just as the DNA that is us, the double helix spiral. So that's just a way to look at things fractally. You just keep getting larger or smaller and noticing that the patterns are the same. And Elizabeth says, all of the mystical and other religions and UFOs, all of that is interesting. It's not just one way, it is many ways. There is so much that is not totally known about all that there is. Hi, Pamela. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And then this passage, it's saying, humanity is my body. In it I live. That's what we do. Our divine shard lives in our body. So again, the pattern is being shown to us so that we can look at it in a fractal way by applying it to ourselves. Our bodies are not us. Our bodies are what our divine shard lives in. God lives in humanity as his body. In it I live, move, and have my being, expressing the glorious light of my idea through my attributes. That's what we do. Our divine shard moves and has its being inside our bodies, and it expresses itself, the light that comes from the divine shard that's passed to it from God or from the divine, that passes through our divine shard. It filters through our personality. That's this body. And of course, it has to filter imperfectly because our bodies are imperfect. Our minds, our brains are not perfect. And that's a lot of what life is spent, is cleaning up these film strips, perfecting them, editing the film together so that the projection is perfect, even if the means of expressing the projection are imperfect. The movie projector doesn't have to function perfectly. It doesn't have to be undamaged. It simply has to work well enough to shine the light through the film strip. It's the film strip that's got to be perfect, not the person who's showing it. So in it I live, move, and have my being, expressing the glorious light of my idea through my attributes, whose celestial radiance to the human vision is bedimmed. That's all the filters, the ones that we're projecting through, and the ones that the others are seeing through. The celestial radiance to the human vision is bedimmed and distorted by the myriads of clouded and imperfect facets of the human intellect. That's all those layers of the personality. Some are opaque. Some are transparent. We can't see through the opaque ones. We may be able to see through the transparent ones and receive the love, the message that the divine is sending. He can see through all of them. Nothing's blocking his sight of us. It's always that we're blocking our own sight, our own hearing of him. So humanity is my body. In it I live, move, and have my being, expressing the glorious light of my idea through my attributes, whose celestial radiance to the human vision is bedimmed and distorted by the myriads of clouded and imperfect facets of the human intellect. Now, I think for Elvis, he would have found comfort in this passage because it says, Elvis, when you're out on stage and you're singing your heart out and you're sending out that love and you know it's being received and people are sending love back. But there's those individuals that you speak to and you realize when you speak to them that they didn't get that message at all from a particular song, all of the songs, from the performance, and you begin to feel like it wasn't worth it. I didn't get it done right. It wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect. That no one can truly see the projections that we're sending out with total clarity because they themselves are dimmed because of the personality. And it's more about the brightness that we ourselves need to send out the message with. So it would be telling Elvis that you know the message is bright because you're receiving back the love of so many. And that means there's a chance that these in the shadows are going to be able to see this light. And that it's not a failure that they didn't see it, or that they didn't pick it up, or even if you sent it out and no one sent it back. Let's say that you did get out there one time and not a single person applauded, stood up, or did anything to acknowledge that you've reached them. Still okay, because they are bedimmed and they have distortions just as you do. And their distortions are not allowing any projections to get through. It's not just you, but that's why you're needed out there to be the brightest projection that's possible so that we can test to see if they're receiving any projections. But I'm just reading all of that into this, and I have no idea how Elvis would have really seen it, but it's definitely saying that everyone is clouded, but none of us are imperfect. We just have imperfect receiving devices for the message. We have a radio, but not all of the transistors are humming perfectly. And Big Money Mike says that our bodies are only a shelter for the divine shard. And Mark says there may be as many as 13 universes. And the fractal idea happens at 10 to the negative 39th power. And that's small. And Elizabeth says, just curious which state I live in. I live in Georgia in the United States. Almost in Florida, but not quite. And Elizabeth says that Elvis was definitely one of the brightest projections. And he was a projection full of doubt. That's why he was doing all this searching and the spiraling. He was always doubting if he was getting the right message out. So he was always bringing it back and trying to perfect that film strip. And this says, I and you who are one with me reincarnate in humanity. So Joseph is taking the idea of reincarnation, which is usually I reincarnate as another human, or as a specific animal, or as a rock. Some, I think religions or thought platforms have ideas of a hierarchy of incarnation, so that you pass from a lower form into a higher form as you learn the lessons of the universe. Others, I think, just postulate that you move from person to person. You just come back as another person. And he's taking it all and saying, everything that's made, everything that we've ever experienced on Earth is a piece of the divine. Only humanity is the divine shards. But the others are pieces of the divine. They're not splinters in the way that we are, but they're made from the building blocks of the divine, which is love. Everything is made of love. Everything is unity. So we are all one with God, and all one with each other, and one with everything around us. And so we, as not as these specific divine shards, but as splinters of God, reincarnate in humanity. Because we are one with each of the shards that incarnates. But then it says, as the oak reincarnates in its leaves and acorns. And that would be its children. Season after season, and again in the 1,000 oaks born from their thousands of acorns, and their oaks generation after generation. And it's just pointing out that we're all linked through unity. And so this idea of reincarnation, he's just moved it away from the personal or the personality to the impersonal, which is what his book is all about. That unity has no personalities. We shed that before we go back. It's just a tool we use here. And then you could think of fungibility, which is a word that they use for money. Let's say you have a large bank account. I know that we would all like to have a large bank account. And you could think of that bank account as Scrooge McDuck's money bin. I don't know if you've ever seen Scrooge McDuck's money bin from Disney, but he can swim in his dollar bills. He's got so many. So you have this large building of dollar bills, and you take a wheelbarrow full of dollar bills and you drop it in. Now you have no idea which dollar bills you dropped in and which were already in there, especially after you swim around for a couple of minutes. That's fungibility. When you pull the next dollar out, you don't know whether it was the specific dollar you put in. And when they track that in accounting, they just call that fungibility. And you could think of our divine shard returning to unity, where it becomes undifferentiated from all other unity. That's the impersonal. Therefore, if there is a reincarnation, and there's definitely incarnation, because new people are arriving on Earth every day, and their shards have to incarnate from somewhere. But even if there is reincarnation, you wouldn't bring your old personality with you because it's already gone. And that's, I think, what he's pointing out here. And then it says, but you remember your past lives. Do you? Are you sure? Very well, but what if you do? So the book knows that some people are going to come to it, and they're going to be strongly tied to this idea of reincarnation. And at the time he wrote it, people were strongly tied to the idea of reincarnation. It had gotten into the public psyche, and there were people that were absolutely certain it was explaining things that were going on inside them. And Elizabeth says that it also helps in regards so that she knows when to watch, because I live in Georgia, because when the time is going to change. That's a great point that I meant to talk about today, and I totally forgot, which is that time changes tomorrow here in the United States. And this helps us to understand that time is a construct of man, because tomorrow, 10 o'clock, will be 11 a.m., but it will still be called 10 a.m. here in the United States. Now, I don't think it's changing in other parts of the world. So basically, I'm bouncing forward 1 hour on the show times, although it doesn't feel that way to me. Now, I think that at the end of the month, and again, I'm terrible with how this really occurs, but I think at the end of the month, the European and UK areas change time as well. And we'll go back to the same time difference that we've always had. But starting tomorrow for like a week or two, we're going to have that weird extra hour change in there. So I just hope that everybody is aware of that. And I know I didn't verbally explain it very well, but that's why we've all got these phones and computers. Google can explain it much better than I can, and you'll be ready. Now, YouTube will know, so it will tell you in your part of the world on the countdown, 10 minutes from now or whatever that the show starts. That'll be correct. And Pamela says that the UK will change and go forward 1 hour. That's tomorrow. So the UK will stay in sync, according to Pamela, with us. That's good to know. I don't know. Oh, on the 29th of March. So it's exactly as I was saying. We got like 2 weeks here where things are going to be weird. So just be aware. And that it will affect all of your favorite American content creators. And for those of us in America that watch European content creators, it throws everything off for us too. So Joseph is addressing Monica's saying that in Sweden, it will also change at the end of the month. Yeah, so we're going to be a couple of hours off there for at least a couple of weeks. And Joseph says, but you say you remember your past lives. So he jumps into what, at the time he wrote the book, is a popular thing. Probably not as popular now, but there's still going to be people that enter this book and they're going to have this idea. Somebody here right now might believe in reincarnation. I'm not saying anything about whether is or is not. Joseph is certainly saying there that there's some kind of recycling of the shards going on, although it's not clear whether it's the same shards coming back to Earth. So there's certainly incarnation, and that pool that the incarnation comes from is the same pool that everyone's returning to, so that we could see how the idea of reincarnation could be there. But then he asks, are you sure? And then he says, well, even if you are, because that's the next part. Very well, what if you do? Just because I have permitted you a glimpse of the reality of one of my past expressions, that you might the better comprehend my meaning, which I am now expressing to you, is no assurance from me that you personally were my avenue of that expression. And so he says, are you sure that you are a reincarnated soul? And you're answering, oh, absolutely. I know I am. I remember this. I remember that. He then says, very well, let's assume that you remember these things. What does it mean that you remember them? Does that mean that you're reincarnated? He says, just because I gave you knowledge. Now, the book's already told us that we have access to all divine knowledge. We could think of it today as unlimited bandwidth on the divine internet. All of the divine knowledge is available, but we can't possibly hold it all. We can only access what we need when we need it. And at some point during one of our divine internet surfing experiences, we're flipping around, watching different divine YouTube channels on the divine internet, and we catch a glimpse of some program that's got a reality from the past, and we feel it deep inside that this was us. And there's a lesson that was learned there through whatever divine expression was projected at that period in time through that person. And then we think, well, that must be us. But what the passage is saying is that that's not an assurance it's you. It's an assurance that this message is for you. There is a lesson that was learned, that the expression was projected so that other divine shards could hold on to it. And I'm sending it to you so that you could hold on to it. Just like the other divine shards who saw it. But they were not fogged to think that the projection was themselves. They understood it was a projection from another shard, and to learn the attribute that was being expressed. So there's a fog of personality confusion here. And notice that he has italicized the word personally. Because personally doesn't exist for the divine. There is only the impersonal. Personal is this tool that you have, And while God may note your fine garden tool, it's like you came with your rake or your shovel. And that's a very nice rake or shovel, but that's the end of the conversation. He doesn't need to talk about your personality. He doesn't need to look through it. He doesn't need to do anything with. That's your tool that he's given you to do whatever it is you need to do here. He's given it to you to care for and to modify. And it's okay to show him he knows, but in the sheepfold, you set aside that tool or that personality. And therefore, that personality, he's not going to send you a second personality. You have your tool. This other shard was using a different tool, and you feel like you have a resonance with that shard because you do. You're both parts of the divine. And Elizabeth says that she lives in the United States, so time here doesn't change, but she has to keep aware with the rest of the country that does. Because each of the states gets to decide on their own. That is true. We're not even completely united on this time thing that we do every year. But yeah, it does. I live somewhere where we didn't change time for a while either. And it's New York City, right? Like New York City like drives the whole world as to what time is it in New York City if you do anything with business. And Mark says, if God can raise someone from the dead, why not reincarnate a shard? Well, he definitely could reincarnate a shard. But what the point of the passage is that even if you were a reincarnated shard, your personality burnt away when you returned. And the personality was never part of the shard. It was a tool. And therefore, it doesn't matter whether you were reincarnated. What matters is the projection of the expression that happened through that personality and whether you're going to get that lesson. So it is kind of roundabout, and it could be saying, hey, there is reincarnation. It's just trying to pull meaning away from that. That while it's spiritually entertaining or fascinating or it's not material to the spiritual lessons. At least in Joseph Benner's opinion, I think is what's being said. And then he says, for I do not express through all avenues in you with me. And are we not the life and the intelligence of all expression, no matter what the character or the age or race? This is another statement of unity. He's asking, doesn't God express through all avenues? Yes, everything is God. And you with me, and yes, God expresses through our divine shard. And are we not the life and the intelligence? Is God not in all expression, which is all of humanity, in all character, age, or race? And yes, every person is a divine shard. They're each a piece of the divine. But it pleases you to believe that you actually were that expression. It is well. So it says if you need this reincarnation idea to reach alignment, because Joseph Benner is all about alignment, if it helps your personality to become transparent to the I am, to believe that this other personality was also you, then go ahead and do that. If it clouds your communication with God, if it turns you from alignment, if it disorients you, throw it away. It says, "But if it pleases you to believe that you actually were the expression, it is well, and I shall cause such belief to be of benefit to you." This is that statement that Jesus made about being sincere and seeking alignment. That sincerity in the search is that Jesus treats it as alignment. That he himself turns you into alignment. He reorientates you based on your sincerity. That no one is lost as long as they truly seek. That they're sincere in their belief. And so if you are truly seeking and you've incorporated this reincarnation belief as part of that true seeking, well, then that is of benefit to you, because the I Am will ensure that the resonance that you were meant to receive is received, is heard from that idea. This is also a statement by Joseph Benner, who would be subject to attack by authorities of the church, of the Christian church specifically that he was a part of, or the other sects that he was trying to reach. That this protects Joseph himself. It's saying that it's okay to seek outside the Bible. It's okay to read these other books. It's okay to question what's been told to you. That the I Am or God will make that of a benefit to you, where the authoritative religious teachers of these various sects would most likely, even today, say that's not true. That there's danger to be found in tempting yourself by looking at these various ideas that you know not to be the Bible. So that's part of the fine line that we're walking all the time here as we read through these books. So to some extent, this is self-justification on Benner's part for what Benner is doing. Now, does that mean it's invalid? That it's not true? Well, I don't know. What it means is it's self-interested. And when people have a self-interest to write something, we probably should question the motive, not because it makes it evil or wrong that he did so, or even that he twisted the truth to do so, but that if there is a lensed perspective here, you know, if the colors that Joseph Benner's prism has teased out of the light are not real or incorrect, this would kind of protect him from that. It's good for us to know if that lens could be affecting these words. And truthfully, it's for the whole book as well. And it even comes into play in the translation of the Bibles and the people who wrote those books themselves, the books of the Bible. But it's much clearer and easier to see in books that are written closer to our own time, in language that's closer to our own language, in language that is our natural and first language. So I know we've got people in the room that English is not their first language. And so there is that one step away. But for those of us who read English as a native language, Benner is easier to understand, even with his run-on sentences, than the King James Bible itself. And of course, I'm getting off on kind of a tangent here. Let me look at the chat. And Mark says that he loves being enlightened. I'd like to think that I can enlighten anybody. My goal is to illuminate, but I don't know how strong my light is. if it's even on. And Elizabeth says, I agree with Joseph Benner on this. To her, it seems like the more knowledge, the better. Or at least opening ourselves up to the knowledge. Now, Joseph, to defend Joseph, he's given you a method to discern the truth, which is the resonance. And I've been thinking a lot about resonance because I use the word a lot. And so I have some thoughts about it that link to emotions and how, emotions are subjective. They're created in the moment. They're fleeting. They're chemical processes in our brains, but we feel them. And so we have some kind of sensory perception inside ourselves to feel these emotions. And then we've got something like love, which is not an emotion. It's a state of being, but we feel it. And we feel it through the same sensory perception that we do emotions. And because we feel emotions all the time, we therefore think love is an emotion. It's got shadow emotions like affection and things like that. But love is the building block of the universe. It is God. It is unity. But we feel it in the same way that we feel emotion. And then there's resonance. And resonance is when we take something into communion with the divine, and the truth vibrates at the same frequency as the divine. And this is not subjective, it is objective. The same way that love is objective, because it's the building block of the universe. It's not subjective in the way that our emotions are. We cannot affect love. We simply use love. We're either creating with love or we're twisting love to make it into something else. But resonance, it's also objective. It's a frequency. So you could think of it as like a radio frequency. It either is at this frequency and your radio picks it up, or it's not at this frequency. If it's close, you'll pick up some static, but if it's not close, you won't pick it up at all. So that frequency either is the right frequency or it's not, but we feel the resonance in the same sensory manner that we do emotion and love. And therefore, we lump these three categories together because we lack the sensory perception to see that they're different. And it's not that they're not different, it's just that we're using a measuring tape to try to measure things that a measuring tape was never designed to measure. Like the cut and clarity and color of a diamond. But we pulled out a ruler and set it up against the diamond. We can't get those measurements with that device. But it's the only one that we have. So I'm going to spin away from... I don't have any choice. We've reached the end of the hour. So it looks like we are going to spin away from this lesson. What did I have? Oh, yeah. I wanted to... Some people brought up yesterday that... let me get a drink here. Some people brought up yesterday... We were talking about reading on phones and different programs that you could use on your phone and different sites. So I have some links here. I'm going to put them into the chat. This is a link for All Reader. And it's the Android program. So if you're on your Android phone, you could go here and download that program. It lets you read text and EPUB books for free. Has no ads, no cost. to get books to read, here are free digital books at Gutenberg.org. And those are older books. And I'm showing one on the screen that's like brand new. They just put up there. It's called Barry Lock Halfback. Now, why would I show this book? Well, you can see there's an illustration. And there's a guy kicking a football. And you could tell it's a football, an American football, because it's oblong. And you only see the ball and the players in shadow. But these people are playing American football. This is a very early American football. They're just wearing cloth hats. They don't even have helmets on. They're not wearing any protective equipment. They are on a field that has lines marked. So they're playing American football. It's a little bit advanced, but it's nowhere near what it is when Elvis plays it. Although it's similar to what he would have played in the 50s when he was in high school, in the late 40s. So this book might have been of interest to Elvis. Can't say that he read it or that he ever saw it, but this might have been one of those books that would have been in a school library, and it talks about football. And you could go there and download this book right now. Now, Gutenberg.org, they're amazing. You don't have to have a reader in order to access things on their site. You could go here, access this book, and read it online in your browser. You just keep scrolling up in the browser to go from page to page. You could do that with virtually all of their books. Sometimes they don't have one of the formats or the other for the books. You'll learn that as you move through. But these are the links to get the readers. It's the link to find at least this site in the books. There's many others, but I know there was interest in that. And today I went on there, and this is one of the books that they're showing as a recent edition. And it's one that, you know, if I handed it to Elvis while we were flying somewhere on the Lisa Marie, he probably would have thumbed through and read this thing. At least I'd like to think he did. And Elizabeth's saying is that I'm definitely a light, and she loves hearing about all of this and likes to think of herself as a seeker and hear other things that she never thought before, and that she appreciates the links. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I do appreciate that. I'm going to let you guys all go with a song now, because we have crossed the hour, and this song's going to be His Heart's Desire. Thank you all so much for being here with me today. You all keep on taking care of business.
His time came too early, the curtain fell too fast. Before he was ready, before we could grasp the man behind the myth, the ache behind the fame. He wanted something simple, not fortune, not acclaim. 6 is 3, the threats came down like rain. He spoke of love, not fear, through the shadow and the strain. I wanna live to be old, he said with quiet grace, to remember her love and see our children's face. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given in his best. No mansion in the sky, no diamond parade, just the warmth of her hand and the life they made. A whisper of laughter, a child's sleepy sigh, that was the dream he carried inside. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest.